meeting. We'll call.
Stunek.
Here.
Pritchett.
Here.
Bevins.
Here.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Here.
Lambert.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
And Badeau.
Present.
Okay, that'll bring us to the next item on the agenda, which is the pledge. I'll just skip that because I find it awkward to say the pledge by myself. And we'll go to item number 4, the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve Bevins.
Second, Pritchett.
A motion by Bevins, a second by Pritchett to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Aye.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. Notice to public, all matters listed are considered routine by the council and will all be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the council votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
Move to adopt Bevins.
Lambert, second.
We have a motion by Bevins, a second by Lambert to adopt the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
And Mr. Chair, if I can, before I call roll, if you guys could mute, unless you're speaking, there's quite a bit of background noise.
I think it's the call-in users. None of them are muted.
Yeah, and I think, oh, there we go. I was gonna say, I think Sean might be helping Wayne, so. Right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to the next item, item number 6. We've got a few public hearings that I hope everybody's okay with it. We decided to put them on the top of the agenda so the citizens who want to speak could say their piece and not have to sit here for 2 hours. For 6A, our first public hearing of the evening is a public hearing and resolution for proposed amendments for Downtown Special Service District and 2020 Nuisance Abatement. And I'm not sure who's presenting this.
I can, Mr. President. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
So pursuant Minnesota Statute 429, this is something that the City Council has to hear. So these assessments are for our Downtown Special Services District and our downtown snow removal and our 2020 nuisance abatement. For Downtown Special Services, this includes our snow removal, our garbage collection downtown, and the landscaping that we provide the downtown. Of the total cost of those services of $93,748.11, the city is proposing to assess $41,049.07. As far as the nuisance abatement, citywide nuisance abatement is concerned, there was $23,710 of fines. And of that, we are assessing the full amount of $23,710. So at this point, we would open up the public hearing to hear testimony for or against those assessments for the Downtown Special Services and the 2020 nuisance abatement. So I'll just turn it over to you, Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I have a couple questions and maybe we want to get council questions before we open the forum, but how do you arrive at assessing $41,000 of $90,000 downtown?
Thank you, Mr. President, if I may. So the landscaping services downtown are fully assessed at 100%, which I think the contract was right around $12,000 for this year. Our snow removal assessment is assessed based on a front footage calculation based on the area of the streets and the sidewalks and the contractor's bids. We cover about 55% historically. And then the 45% is assessed based on that calculation of area. We feel that this is what is over, above, and beyond what we would typically provide a regular resident or business in the city of Brainerd. And so that's how that assessment has been calculated.
Thank you, Paul. Any other council members with questions or comments? Are you ready for a public hearing? Let's open the public hearing on this one issue. Sean, will you unmute everybody? And we'll see if anybody is here to discuss the Downtown Special Services District and the 2020 nuisance abatement.
Nothing's getting computed.
Yeah. And Sean might be on the phone with Wayne. Does anybody else have the power to unmute these users? Well, are you texting Sean, Jennifer? That would be pros at these virtual meetings by now. Maybe the 2 weeks off.
Sean here on the phone.
Got us rest.
What is the issue?
Can we unmute all of the call-in users to have a public hearing?
Okay. Wayne, I gotta do this real quick.
Okay, we got number 7 needs to be unmuted too. Thank you. Okay, so now if you are here for the proposed assessments for the Downtown Special Service District or the 2020 nuisance abatement, please state your name and address.
Richard Weatherall, 616 Norwood Street.
Richard Weatherall, you have the floor.
Okay, well, I'm just concerned because I don't feel I have snow removal done every year and I have my lawn mowed. I don't see where I have any nuisance.
Did you receive a letter?
Yes, and that's why I'm calling it right now because it said 7:30 tonight. But I was calling because I'm confused.
Okay, thank you, Richard. David, can you answer that question?
I take care of the property.
David Jansky, could you? Oh, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Richard. I'm trying to get an answer as to what your nuisance abatement letter is regarding.
Yes. Okay, I appreciate it, but
Yeah, we just can't hear you, David Jansky.
How about now?
Now I got you.
Okay, there we go. Yes, Mr. Weatherall, his nuisance citation was for, I received a citation last fall. So it was just, I think it was either September last year, it was a property maintenance issue for a roof. I believe what happened was he received then some citations. Winter came, then the roof was covered, so we stopped seeking enforcement, and then COVID happened, so then we stopped seeking enforcement. But having looked at this before, I actually got a call about this before. It is a property maintenance issue regarding his roof.
Thank you.
I didn't hear what the nuisance was.
So, Richard, apparently you received a letter saying that you have a property maintenance issue with the roof on your
Yes.
home or
Yes,
accessory.
but I went back and seen them and told them I don't see any problem with my roof because I don't have any leaks. So what would be my problem?
Can you answer that, David?
Just from what I understand from my inspector's opinion, it didn't meet the requirement. I don't know. I believe it might have had either missing shingles or other issues that they felt like it did not meet the requirements for the property maintenance code.
Well, I've talked to the VA. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and the VA said they would help me with that roof, so I can get anything done any problem they have. But I just don't see any problem. I keep the grass mowed. Everything looks good. Everything's clean. I just don't understand why you guys are coming down on me. I'm frightened. I'm an old man and I'm a Vietnam veteran and I'm just panicking. I just don't know what to do. Because my finances are limited. I'm living off Social Security basically, and trying to pay my bills. I just got through my nightmare of paying taxes. I got my taxes now paid up for the year, but I just got that done on the 15th.
Mr. President, if I may, there's times where these public hearings where we will actually adjourn the public hearing to the next meeting and allow us to work with the resident on getting the issue resolved. And then if we get it resolved, we don't need to have the adjourned hearing anymore, and we can just move on, waive the fine, and work out a way to get the issue resolved, as that's our chief concern is getting the.
Okay.
God bless you.
Okay, do we need to wait till we close the public hearing to take that action? So Richard, thanks for calling in. I think that's the action we'll take for you is we'll put this off. We'll put it off for 2 weeks and you just get a hold of City Hall and let's get a plan to get your roof fixed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Take care now. So
Bye-bye.
now, if there's anybody else here to speak to the Downtown Special Service District or the 2020 nuisance abatement, please say your name and address.
Kayleen Lewis, 142. Yep. 142. Yes.
You have the floor.
1424 South 8th Street. I guess I'm calling because I don't know exactly which fine, like what nuisance. My lawn is not mowed right now. I know that it is long because I don't have a license, so I haven't been able to be at my home of residence in a while. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out what I need to get cleaned up and fixed.
Okay, well, we mailed you letters. David, do you have the info on this property?
Looks like from what I can tell, one unlicensed vehicle. Actually, it looks like all unlicensed vehicles.
Which is, that is my main vehicle, and I'm trying to get it fixed, but I recently lost my job back in April, and with all of my bills, I haven't been able to get my car fixed, and it doesn't go in reverse. So if I pull it into my garage, I can't get it back out.
Okay, and you're asking what are you asking the city to help you with or do for you here?
I guess I'm trying to get it pulled in the garage. I'm trying to find a safe way if I hide it, it's good, right? Like if it's in my garage.
If it's in your garage, you will not receive a citation.
Okay. So if I find a way to push it into my garage, will this be done and over with, I guess is my question.
Well, our ultimate goal is always to abatement. So we'd like the unlicensed vehicles to get licensed, which is our ultimate goal.
But I physically don't have a license right now, so I don't really see a point in getting tabs on my car if I'm not driving it and nobody is and it's broken.
Okay, well, can we, okay.
Mr. Chair,
Jan.
what is the amount of the fine, may I ask?
It's 500. And that's how much it's costing to fix my car, and I can't even get that much to fix my car right now. So.
Alderman Pritchett.
Well, if she could get the car into the garage, I mean, you can have an unlicensed vehicle in your garage.
Yeah.
Right. So could we just have it like, give her some time and she can get it in the garage? We can check on it. If it's in the garage, fine. But if that unlicensed vehicle is back out of the garage and still unlicensed, then we kind of go back to, the nuisance and the fine.
I like that. I like that solution, Alderman Pritchett. So I tell you what, I think what we're going to do here is it's likely, it doesn't look like any council members are disagreeing. It's likely we'll put this off for 2 weeks or so. So I'd like you to get the car in the garage, contact City Hall, see what else you need to do, and let's get that taken care of as soon as possible. And we'll revisit this in a couple of weeks. Alderman Bevins.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Alderman Bevins, you're muted.
Are you allowing council comments during the public hearing, Mr. Chair? It
Yes,
appears you are. May I ask Mr. Chansky a question?
you may.
Are these letters, do they have a telephone number that people can call, Mr. Chansky?
They do. Every letter.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I sense a dangerous precedent. You're going down the path, or it appears you're going down the path of allowing people to ignore the letters, ignore the telephone number, because this council will abate the fine, so you don't have to do anything. Just wait until the council meeting and then say you didn't understand, or whatever reason. You've heard two reasons why people couldn't call that telephone number. Yet they could call in tonight. And you said no council member seems to object. I might consider an objection to both of these. If either one had called City Hall, I might be much more sympathetic. But if all you have to do is wait until the nuisance hearing and come before the council and say, please abate it, and we do, then it seems like we might as well not send what's the point? Now, that's a question. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a comment.
Thank you, Alderman Bevins. I don't know what the point is either. But I will say, if we're setting a precedent, we are setting a precedent in an economic recession during a global pandemic. So those would be two key indicators for any precedent we are setting. Paul Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. President. So in these circumstances, and what we've done, as I stated before in previous years, is anytime there is an objection to one of these nuisance assessments, we do typically adjourn the hearing on all of those. It doesn't matter what the issue is. We usually pull those out of the assessment roll, work with them for 2 weeks. If we find that there's no reason to waive the fines, then we don't. If we find that there is a reason and we've worked with them and we found a good solution, then we come back to the council with a recommendation. And that's been the typical precedent that we've had at these especially for the nuisances, not really for the street projects, but for nuisances, we have done it that way in the past. So that's what I would recommend again.
Thank you, Paul. Jan.
Mr. Chair, the other thing too is that it's not going to be true if they don't comply within 2 weeks, then they are still responsible for that fine. So I think it's fair just to give it 2 weeks. So that's
So thanks, Jan. So I think, based on what Paul said, I think we'll just try and roll through the rest of these and then take action afterwards to get 2 weeks to figure out an assessment. But let's see if there's anybody else. I'm just tough to do a public hearing. I wasn't looking forward to tonight because I don't really like WebEx meetings. Is there anybody else here to speak on Downtown Special Service District and 2020 nuisance abatement assessments? If you are, please say your name and address.
Kathy Ogden, 1812 South 7th Street.
You have the floor, Kathy.
I did call and I found out that it was in January 7th, we received a citation for having an unlicensed vehicle. I know that my son talked with David about, we're unable to license it because it was a long, complicated story. It was a gift through death. And we couldn't get a clean title because there was a lien that had been paid but not signed off. Anyway, long story short, we did get the car licensed this summer. So do we still have a fine?
Do they, can you answer that, David? It was unlicensed, they received a fine, then they later licensed it. Do they still have the fine?
At this
He had said there
time,
wasn't going, sorry.
do we have, I believe, let me find it really quick. I believe there still is one fine on the assessment roll from that January letter. And I do not know at this point if we, prior to our current software, if we determined that to be complied or not. In the past, what we've done, especially if it's only information that the person has received, if they get, because sometimes that can take a little bit, they get compliance, then citation. I think in this situation, what might have happened is that it was over the winter, COVID, all that, everything happened, and we didn't know, we didn't hear that compliance had been taken. I believe right now, I'm just confirming, gotta find it in the list here. Only one citation.
Yep.
It's only the one citation.
So is there a fine that needs to be paid, and how much is it?
The current fine is $120 citation, and $25 is the administrative fee.
Okay, Kathy, we'll put this one off for 2 weeks, and you reach out to City Hall and see what we can come together for a recommendation for next week. Thanks for calling in, Kathy.
Thank you.
So that covers that one. Is there anybody else here to discuss the assessments for Downtown Special Service District or 2020 nuisance abatement? Please say your name and address. Anybody here to talk about Downtown Special Service District or nuisance abatement? Please say your name and address. Last call. Is anybody here to talk about the Downtown Special Service District or the nuisance abatement? Please say your name and address. No one's, David Jansky?
Yeah, Mr. President, before we close the public hearing, there are two that I'd like to bring to the council's that staff would like removed from the rolls for two different reasons. The first one is 215 North 5th Street. It's owned by Mr. John Gronwald. He received an assessment for, or is listed for $200. It's for a tree. In this situation, the reason staff is requesting that the council remove it from the roll is when the tree was tagged, the tree was by Tree Inspector Katie Kaufman, handed over to Jason Stubb as the enforcement process. When Mr. Gronwald received the letters list Katie's name on them and her number as she is the tree inspector. What happened? He called Katie, said, I'll remove the tree myself. There was a delay. I don't know if it was Gronwald calling Katie or Katie contacting Jason. We're not 100% sure how that happened, but there was a delay. And so what happened is Jason sent the list of trees to be abated to Mike's Tree Service before Katie had called him. And by the time Katie had called him, Mike's had gone out there like the next day and removed the tree, even though Mr. Gronwald had full intention of removing himself. And so the cost to the city, his assessment was for $200. 25 of that is an administrative fee. So the cost to the city is only $170. So we are asking that the council would just remove that one as it was a communications error. He had fully intended to remove the tree himself. The second one is 1889 That's Mr. Joseph Bakri. I've been working with Mr. Bakri last fall about a trailer we had received some complaints about a trailer he had improperly parked on his property. He received one citation. He contacted me afterwards saying here was a situation. The truck that he pulls the trailer with was out of commission. He had to get it repaired. And he did, once the truck was repaired, move it back onto his property shortly after the citation was given. And I just removed from the rolls. The intention was that one wouldn't have not been on the rolls. So 1889 Graydon and 215 North 5th Street, I would like to request that the council consider removing those two from the rolls.
Thank you, David. Is there any other abatement contestations or requests to remove from citizens that staff received? Seeing none, Kelly, do you want to speak during the public hearing? Is it okay if I close it? You're muted yet.
Thank you. Trying to comply. No, I have no comments in the public hearing, Mr. Chair. I have a motion when you're ready.
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing at 7:59, and I'm ready for the motion, Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we adopt the resolution with the Downtown Special Services District assessing $41,049.07, the nuisance abatement with the $23,710, less the 5 that have been identified this evening, to bring those back in 2 weeks, and I so move.
We have a motion by Alderman Bevins and a second by Lambert to adopt the assessments as presented in the packet, with the exception of the 5 contested assessments that we had discussed here in the public forum. Is there any discussion? Paul?
Just make sure that in your motion that you state you're adjourning the public hearing to next week or 2 weeks from now.
Please include that in the minutes.
Lambert, second.
All right, so Bevins and Lambert included that we're adjourning the public hearing to our next regularly scheduled council meeting. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. I'll move us on to another public hearing. I thought we only had 4. We have 5 tonight. The next public hearing is the public hearing and resolution of proposed assessments related to improvement 14-05, the Old Stonebridge Trail final lift. If you are here to talk about the Old Stonebridge Trail project assessments, please state your name and address. If you are here to talk about Old Stonebridge Trail assessments, please state your name and address. Final call. If you're here to speak about the Old Stonebridge Trail, please state your name and address. Hearing none, we opened that at 8 o'clock. We're closing that at 8:01. Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we adopt the resolution for improvement 14-05 and setting the assessments at $29,704. And I so move.
I'll second that with closing the public hearing also.
Alderman Bevins and motion and Pritchett and a second by Alderman Pritchett. Is there any discussion? None. We will vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. The next public hearing is proposed assessments on improvement 19-10, the Northeast Brainerd Resurfacing Project. If you are here to talk, Paul, do you want to say something before I open the public forum?
Yeah, I'll just go over a brief description of the project, if I may, Mr. President, along with So this assessment hearing is for improvement 1910, as the president stated. This was for the resurfacing of multiple streets in Northeast Brainerd, them being 11th Avenue Northeast from H Street to J Street, J Street from Mill Avenue to 10th Avenue Northeast, and 11th Avenue Northeast to 13th Avenue Northeast, L Street between Mill Avenue and 8th Avenue Northeast, O Street from 9th Avenue Northeast to 12th Avenue Northeast, 10th Avenue Northeast from N Street to O Street and P Street to Q Street, and P Street from Mill Avenue to 10th Avenue Northeast. Of the total improvement cost of $1,228,021, we are proposing to assess $255,594. This is based on the city's assessment policy of assessing for approximately 50% of the street resurfacing costs. If there are questions about how that is calculated, I can answer those. Otherwise, I would recommend opening the public hearing and hearing testimony for or against those assessments on those streets.
Thank you, Paul. With that, I will open the public hearing at 8:04 p.m. If you are here to talk about the assessments for improvement 19-10, the Northeast Brainerd Resurfacing Project, please state your name and address. If you are here to speak on the proposed assessments for improvement 1910 in Northeast Brainerd, please state your name and address. Final call, if you're here to speak on the proposed assessments for the Northeast Brainerd Resurfacing Project, please say your name and address. Hearing nobody come forward, we will close the public hearing at 8:04. Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we adopt the proposed assessments in the attached resolution, adopting the assessments as proposed for improvement 19-10 at $255,594, and I so move.
Lambert, second.
Motion by Bevins, a second by Lambert. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes?
W. Erickson,
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to 6D, a public hearing and resolution for proposed assessments on improvements 13-20, 19-09, and 19-16, Northeast Brainerd Reconstruction Project. Paul, do you want to explain this one to us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. These improvements were in Northeast Brainerd. Once again, they consisted of street reconstruction on B Street between Gillis Avenue and 5th Avenue Northeast, street reconstruction on 5th Avenue Northeast from Washington Street to D Street, and the street reconstruction of the 3 streets that enter the East Brainerd Mall property, those being B, C, and D Street, basically from 5th Avenue Northeast to the private property line. Of the total $1,877,358 project cost, we are proposing to assess $347,631 to the properties along those projects. So I would recommend, if there's any questions, to ask them now. Otherwise, open the public hearing to hear testimony, written or oral objections to those assessments.
Thank you, Paul. Does any council members have questions about the project or assessments? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing at 8:07 p.m. Sean, will you unmute that? Thank you. If you are here to talk about the proposed assessments for improvements 13-21, 19-09, and 19-16 Northeast Brainerd Reconstruction Project, please state your name and address. If you are here to speak on the assessments on the Northeast Brainerd Reconstruction Project, please state your name and address. And final call, if you're here to speak on the Northeast Brainerd Reconstruction Assessments, please say your name and address. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 8:07. Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we adopt the attached resolution setting the assessments at $347,631 as presented for proposed improvements for completed improvements 13-41, 1909, and 1916.
Lambert, so move.
We have a
Second,
motion by
Levine.
Bevins, a second by Lambert. Is there any council discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson. I'm going to acknowledge that I see
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to 6E, a public hearing and resolution on proposed assessments on improvements 16-09 and 19-07, Buffalo Hills Lane and Mississippi Drive Reconstruction Project. Paul, you want to lead us in here?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was a project that was substantially completed back in 2019. And we completed the turf restoration and growing period here in 2020. Of the project consisted of a street reconstruction on Buffalo Hills Lane from Brainerd Avenue to the dead end, which is just past Mississippi Drive, and Mississippi Drive from Buffalo Hills Lane to the other dead end. The total project cost of the improvements were $1,854,910, of which we are proposing to assess $381,817. This is based on the city's assessment policy, and if there are any questions, you can ask them now. Otherwise, you can open the public hearing as we've done previously.
Thank you, Paul. And I think our assessment policy assesses 100% for the first construction of the road, and we're actually only assessing 50% in this project. We didn't even follow them. Is there any questions of Paul? Hearing no questions of Paul, I will open the public hearing at 8:10 p.m. If you are here to speak on the proposed assessments on improvements 1609 and 1907, the Buffalo Hills Lane and Mississippi Drive project, state your name and address.
That's 216 Ridge Drive.
What was your name?
Shane Olstead.
Floor is yours.
Yes, sir. We were assessed for two different lots. We have one residence that covers both lots. There's no room for expansion on either lot. And so we were assessed basically for two assessments for one residence.
Okay, Paul, will you? Paul Sandy?
Yeah, we have a written objection from Mr. Olstad on file here. We do, I don't know if you want to take my testimony now, Mr. President, or if we want to hear the rest of it and have me speak at once and cover all the items. We have 3 written objections to these assessments, which is what's required to formally contest the assessment. And so I can either read those into the public record it's up to you, Mr. President, or we can show them on the screen.
I have no strong feelings one way or another. Kelly, do you want to handle this one by one or just go through all the public hearing and then have Paul address? You're muted.
I don't see, I think ask Mr. Sandy, is it easiest to talk on all the grievances?
I think going one by one is probably the easiest.
Handle this first one then.
Can we mute whoever has all the feedback? Is that you, Jennifer? I think it is.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Mr. Olstad is contesting his assessment based on our methodology that we use. So when we originally discussed this methodology at the beginning of the project, we were assessing based on the number of originally platted parcels. This takes into account if parcels were joined together or split from the original plat to what exists today. And so Mr. Olstad, having 2 lots, does have a substantially larger lot than a lot of the lots in the Ridge Drive development. We were trying to account for that and give people credit if they did split lots and build a home on a smaller lot. And so that was the reason why we did do the assessments the way that we are proposing. I can read Mr. Olstad's letter into the public record. This letter is to state our objection to the assessment for improvement 1609 and 1907, 216 Ridge Drive. The justification for our objection are as follows. The resident is built on 2 lots and was constructed evenly over the 2 lots, therefore not allowing any more expansion or building of the other residents on either lot. With only 1 residence, the improvements would only be benefiting 1 household and thereby be assessed as 1 property, not 2 separate lots. The value of the assessment is vague, and how the assessment amount was decided upon, considering our home is not actually on the improved streets being assessed. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. Really, the explanation is, as I stated before, we were assessing based on the original number of platted parcels in those developments. If you have a combined parcel or your home is on 2 parcels, we assessed it as such. If your parcel was split, then we did give you credit. If it was split 75%, 25%, you only got a 75% assessment based on the calculations that we performed with a base assessment rate and the multiplication factors that went into that to give people credit for other things. So if you want an explanation on how that was calculated, I can certainly do that, Mr. Chair. Otherwise, I think that handles the reason why we assessed the way we did with Mr. Olstad's parcel.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mr. Holstad. Move on to the next objection.
Sorry.
Yeah, my wife here is Emily Olstead as well with me.
I am wondering, you explained why you assessed it this way. It doesn't seem fair that we're paying double just because we have 1 residence on 2 lots.
Well, the explanation was that it was per lot was the assessment methodology. So if you have 2 lots, that each lot would have 1 assessment.
But either I understand that, but there is no way there will ever be another residence on the other lot.
We didn't
Right.
assess.
So why are we being assessed as
1 resident
as opposed to 2 lots? I mean, we got 2 separate pieces of paper.
Right. We have 1 address. We have 2 separate pieces of paper. We're taxed as 1. We're not taxed separately either.
No.
We're taxed as 1 residence.
So double assessing us is unfair and unjustified.
Right. The assessment was 1 assessment per originally platted lot in the development. And are you contesting that you don't have 2 lots?
Well, no, I don't. I know I have 2 lots, but it should be changed and considered per resident, not per lot. And the fact that we got 2 assessments is not correct or is not fair. Considering we get, like my husband said, we get taxed for 1 residence. Why are we being assessed for 2?
Okay, thank you. Is there anything further you'd like to add?
No, I'd like to have this fixed, please, for 1 assessment, not 2.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to.
Mr. Chair.
And we're going to move on. We're going to just get the public hearing out of the way here, Jen.
Oh, okay,
well,
thanks.
I would like someone to get back to me on this, either tonight or another day.
Okay, thank you, Holstads. We're going to move on. Other members of the public are here to speak on this issue as well. If you are here to speak on the Buffalo Hills Lane and Mississippi Drive reconstruction project, please state your name and address. If you're here to speak on the Buffalo Hills Drive project, please state your name and address. Last call, if you're here to speak to the Buffalo Hills Drive project, please state your name and address. So nobody else is coming forward to speak on Buffalo Hills Drive assessments tonight, but Paul does have a few he wants to read into the record.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We had two other formal objections in writing to these assessments. One is from Mr. James and Elsie Carlson at 153 Carroll Lane. It reads, the Buffalo Hills Lane and Mississippi Road rebuild project turned out very well. Those who live on those roads will enjoy the new benefits for many years. We don't live on Buffalo Hills Lane, but your tax assessment treats us as if we do. 4 questions he has: logical, fair, discriminatory, illegal, question marks after all of them. The City Council is meeting on October 19th to consider adopting special tax assessments as prepared by Mr. Paul Sandy for the above mentioned project. I understand that you have instructed him how to prepare these special tax assessments. The total amount being assessed is $381,817. The assessment methodology used is legally flawed in numerous ways. In previous correspondence with Mr. Sandy and with Ms. Torstensen, I discussed the numerous deficiencies. I presume you have seen my prior discussions because you were informed by Mr. Sandy and or Ms. Torstensen. Our special tax assessment is $1,700. Our property at 153 Carroll Lane is being taxed at a higher rate than many other project properties because the city believes there is a legal right to tax those of us who live on Carroll Lane a higher rate because we must use Buffalo Hills Lane in order to get to Carroll Lane. There is no supported Minnesota law for this approach. I have asked to be furnished a legal opinion or legal opinions which explain why the city has such a legal right. I have been told the city is not required to furnish me this information because it's protected by attorney-client privilege. Really? The city's tax assessment procedure allows us to request a reconsideration of the assessment either by attending a meeting and by making our case or by submitting a written statement. I'm submitting this written statement. I ask you, the City Council, to reconsider our tax assessment amount. In order to resolve our legal dispute with the city, my wife and I request you reduce the tax assessment of our property from $1,700 to $400. A special tax assessment for road reconstruction is authorized only to the extent a property's value increases on the account of the road reconstruction project. The reality is, in many or most cases, there will be no increase or the increase will be minimal in a property's value on account of a road being reconstructed. And this is certainly true if the property is not directly on the rebuilt road. I will not be attending the meeting on the 19th because the city chose to give me and others the minimum notice required by law. If the City Council was really serious about giving the affected city residents a chance to contest their assessments, you would have furnished a more timely notice, or you would have asked for additional input from the affected residents. For a long time, I have thought that only if this matter would be resolved would require going to district court. I've lived in Brainerd for nearly 40 years. I realize the city is accustomed to assessing special tax assessments in questionable amounts. I intend to go to district court if our assessment is finalized and is more than $400. In summary, the city believes it has the right to impose special tax assessments when it does a road reconstruction. The city's argument and approach is if you live in the area and if you will benefit from the road reconstruction, then you should have to pay for it. Minnesota law does not support this approach. Minnesota law requires the cost of streets and roads be paid from state aid funds or from a city's general tax revenues. A special tax assessment for road reconstruction is authorized only to the extent a property's value increases on account of the road reconstruction project. By going to district court, we will find out the methodology used by the Nagels firm and the city in general meets the requirements of Minnesota law or not. Meets the Minnesota law. I seriously doubt it does. I will welcome the court's review of this matter because someone needs to review the city's approach and revise it. The approach is unlawful for many reasons. Signed, Jim Carlson, 153 Carroll Lane. The other one is from Mr. Patrick Kruger, representing Faye Abrahamson. She lives at 308 Buffalo Hills Lane. I am representing Faye Abrahamson, the owner of the above referenced lot in the Crya edition, Buffalo Hills Lane, on behalf of Ms. Abrahamson and in accordance with Minnesota statutes 429.081. I'm hereby providing the city with notice of Ms. Abrahamson's objection to the proposed assessment of $4,200 as set forth in the city's letter to Ms. Abrahamson on October 2nd, 2020. So I guess if the council would like any explanation on those letters, obviously when we were discussing the assessments, we had an appraisal firm, the Nagels that Mr. Carlson refers to, do a preliminary evaluation of market benefit to neighboring properties to the project based upon indirect access or frontage, no frontage, rear side frontage. There was multiple buckets that each property would fit into. He gave us a preliminary look at the market benefit that these properties would have based on the road being reconstructed to a city standard. I will tell you that all of these assessments fit within or are actually on the lower end of the Nagel report for the benefit that the appraisers did provide. And so really the city staff and I believe the city attorney, Mr. Lang, are very comfortable with where we are at in these assessments. At this point, the letters are really the only, since they stated they're not going to attend the meeting, the letters are really the only testimony that are really set forth to you guys here tonight. And so staff's recommendation would be to adopt the assessments as presented here at the meeting, unless you have other questions for me.
Thank you, Paul. With that, I'll close this public hearing at 8:24. And are there any council questions before we get on with the motion?
Mr. Chair?
Jan, yeah, you had one, yep.
Yes, going back to the one on Ridge Drive. Now, if they had a combined lot, would that be an issue? I mean, if their lot was combined, would it be considered just one parcel then, Paul?
Thanks, Jan. Paul.
Mr. President, there are parcels that were assessed like the Olstads were assessed, that their parcels were combined, and we assessed them double the base rate also. And so whether you have two formal lots or one lot, it's all based on how those plats were originally developed. And so if you had two lots and you combined them at one point, you got assessed for two lots. If you split a lot in half, 50%, you got 50% of the base rate. And so we tried to take into account in both directions so that that parcel size was taken into consideration, because if you have a double lot, your lot is much bigger and therefore you are benefiting much more from a project like this.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and seeing no other council comments, Alderman Bevins? Muted.
My first Zoom meeting. I move to adopt the attached resolution adopting the assessments at $381,817 as proposed for improvement 16-09 and 19-07.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolutions as attached. Alderman Bevins?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a comment. I've noticed that on virtually all of these, this is a $1.8 million project. And the assessments are $381,000. If anybody ever questions what the benefit is of living in the city of Brainerd, add in a police department, a fire department, a parks and rec, and the list goes on, it's a bargain. You just got a 20% assessment on a $1.8 million project. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bevins. I would like to add that I was first elected like 6 years ago, and that was one of the first things I heard was Buffalo Hills. I had people coming up to me like, "You got to get the road built. You got to get the road built. We've been fighting about it for 15 years, and we finally got this project done. So I think it's a really good win for the city and something that took a real long time to get done, and the project is done. And I think it's a win for everybody, and it's great for that neighborhood. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion by roll.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson. T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
And yes, and that motion carries. And that concludes our public hearing and resolution portion of tonight's meeting. Brings us to item number 7, presentations. Blade Act presentation. Tyler, welcome to the meeting. You have the floor.
Well, good evening, Council President and council members and Mayor. Always good to see everyone. Just a few updates. One, as most of you know, I had the pleasure of moderating our candidate forum here that was put on by the Brainerd Chamber and the League of Women Voters, along with the Dispatch a couple weeks ago. Had Council Member Lambert and Stunek, along with the Mayor and Wayne Erickson as well, in attendance, and they all did a great job. So glad I was able to participate in that, and it's good information. I know we had a good audience out there, 30 to 40 people at times listening to it. So good participation. Glad we were able to pull that off in these interesting times. So just a couple of quick updates to keep your meeting moving. The report that I sent over that the county sent over, showing the CARES Act dollars that had been allocated for the city of Brainerd, included the way that this was done. Just for some clarification, is that we asked for the physical business address on the application. So when the business address came back and listed out Brainerd as their address, we included that just in the overall bucket for Brainerd. Staff had asked then that we remove those off of that list that were not inside the physical city limits. So I got myself a map and identified where they were all at, along with some assistance from my staff. So we moved all of those. We put the ones outside the city limits into a bucket for the county, and left those in that manner. Sent a report back to Administrator Bergman last week. So it lists out that Brainerd had 49 CARES Act applications that were approved inside the city for a total of $479,025.64. So that actually, with that adjustment, moved about 18 of those out. But so still a really good participation from Brainerd businesses. But we have now, as most of you know, as of last Monday, we opened back up round 2. We have approximately $1.9 million left in the for-profit bucket. So we have started round 2, which is going pretty well to this point. I have about 45 applications in as of this morning, which is a good start. I grabbed the assistance of Mr. Bruce Buxton. Last week, he took flyers and walked the river to rail corridor and handed out flyers to those businesses. And if they informed him that they had already applied, he, just talked them through and made sure that they knew what round 2 was, which was good news. And since his visits through there, and I think it was a lot of the businesses just indicated a lack of awareness. Not a lot we can do about that other than what we're trying to do right now, and that's go door to door, basically. So I've got another, I think, 15 businesses that have applied in round 2 from Brainerd so far. Hope to get obviously more than that, but we're trying to do the best that we can to get out to see the businesses to make sure that they're eligible. Those that are eligible do apply, and we can use up these funds. So that's round 2 has started. We're getting round 1. We are getting the expense reports and the grant agreement signed and returned back to me. So that's occurring right now. The county will not release any funds to any applicant that was approved until the grant agreement is signed, dated, and returned along with their expense reports, so that we can validate that their expenses do fall within the CARES Act guidelines. So that is occurring right now. We'll close this next session. The county allowed 2 more weeks, so we will close it on Friday night at midnight, the 23rd. So if you've got any businesses, again, I believe Jennifer, she does have the if you don't have the flyer at this point, I'm sure I can send one over to you so you can distribute it. If the council members want to do that, they're more than willing to, or more than we're able to have them do that, which is great. So just a couple more items that to discuss. I know that our River to Rail group is starting to meet. We are meeting on the second Wednesday of every other month right now. So the group is brought back together now that we can meet again, and we have been meeting. We've met twice now in the CTC room at the Chamber and Bladick offices there. So that's getting some momentum moving forward again with that group. The Anderson Brothers project, as most of you know, will come back in front of the EDA in November. Their group they have their attorneys just looking at the agreements right now, but I would expect that that's back and in front of the EDA for their approval with the next meeting. So we've got, other projects still working. I've gotten, thankfully, now a couple of requests to look at some new projects using the Unified Fund dollars, which most of us know that has kind of hit a little bit of a snag just with what's going on with not a lot of requests for additional movement, but good to hear that that's moving along nicely as well. So, oh yeah, and I fall off the screen. With that, does anybody have any questions for me? I can say, Gabe, now you are muted.
That's not the worst thing to happen in a Zoom meeting today. I promise you that.
No.
I have one question on the second round of the small business grant. The only thing that you changed was the employee limit cap?
Yes, thanks.
Or were there other changes for eligibility that businesses that could apply now that couldn't apply before?
Thanks for bringing that. I apologize for not addressing that initially. What the county did do is they did do that. They released there's no longer an employee cap, so it's from one employee to unlimited. So it has actually brought in some of our larger businesses. BIR as an example. The resorts, it's brought those in. On the nonprofit side, it will allow the hospitals to apply. So it'll allow both the Essentia and CRMC to apply, which is good news. They did take into consideration, and I think they will be acting on the YMCA's request to cover the cost of their supplying daycare for the critical sector workers. So that was certainly a positive. The other thing that they did is that we just did not limit it to those two executive orders. So Executive Order 20-04 and 20-08, we included all executive orders in. So if your business was shut down at any point due to an executive order, you are eligible to apply. There are 89 executive orders right now. So a few of them came in a little bit later. 20-09 brought in most of our dental practices and our hospitals, along with some of the veterinary services. So it was good to pull those in and include those in. And then there's some special consideration being given to the hospitality industry, just because when they were shut down, their executive order was limited to, they could only open up their businesses to essential workers. So the county is making taking into account some consideration on allowing some of our hospitality groups to apply as well.
So that means like the hotels in Brainerd and Baxter could all apply for $10,000 grants?
They can, yes.
But Kelly's Service, who was never ordered shut down, cannot apply for $10,000?
Well, he can apply. I will say that. The way that the language is written is that you would have had to have been forced to shut down. The consideration they're making for the hotels is in the hospitality industry was that sector of it anyway. There was a handful of requests that came through, and some of them had restaurants inside their facilities that were closed that were revenue sources. So they're looking into that right now. There hasn't been any decisions made on whether they're going to be included or not, but there is consideration from the county.
Okay, Tyler, and then if I'm a fishing guide and I operate out of my home, but was not allowed to get out for the opener and stuff because of the lack of travel and stay-at-home orders, can fishing guides get funded?
Fishing guides were, along with dock services, landscapers, they were included in an executive order. So that was, and technically the golf courses were included in those as well. They were just allowed to open earlier than others were, but they were listed in an executive order that ordered them to close their businesses.
Okay, so really, the eligibility might be greatly expanded, and if you haven't applied for this and you're a Brainerd-based business, you may as well spend the few minutes to apply because you may still get funded yet. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct, Tyler?
That's absolutely correct.
Thank you. Kelly, or Jan, you had your hand up first, yeah.
Mr. Chair, Tyler, I've got a question. Does, I had spoken to somebody that is in the rental business, like apartments and everything like that. Are they allowed at all to apply for these funding because of the revenue or is it because it's revenue they lost from non-payment?
Thank you, Councilman Lambert. It's a great question. And actually, I fielded about a half a dozen calls on that today alone. Their mandates were they were never forced to shut their doors. Obviously, this is a revenue loss situation for them. Revenue loss is not a consideration for eligibility. It is just expenses related. Now they're making arguments that, we are paying the expenses, obviously, to the utilities and things like this, but their hands got tied by the state orders to not allow them to evict and serve papers on folks. So that's their argument, I guess, is with the state of Minnesota, not with the county. And they're either way, they're not eligible for these just because it is a revenue loss situation.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Jan. Kelly, do you have a question?
I do not. I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
If either our city administrator or our Bladek representatives have any contact with our state and government representatives that are, I don't want to say supporting the governor, but they're part of the system, I might make the argument that all of the governor's orders and all of the efforts to support the businesses that were closed are fantastic. However, some of us that had to stay open due to lost revenue probably lost more, potentially could have lost more money than those that were closed. I know I did for March and April. So now revenues did recover. Life is much better. But it seems like, in a way, we were penalized for staying open. So, and I'm not putting this in a brick in Tyler's wagon, but sometimes the best of intentions can, I don't want to say backfire, but they can't do all you intended. So, thank you.
So I will, Councilman Bevins, I'm on a call with the state every Thursday, and it's with the Department of, all of the department heads are on this call, and that comment alone that you just made is almost verbatim to what we're hearing every single week from everybody throughout the state. So that message is getting across. It's just, they're not making changes to how these funds are going to be used, but that is, every week we hear it, and there's really zero response. It's gotten to the point of being comical at this point. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, Mayor Bedeau.
Yeah, I just have one quick question. If there is potentially a business that applied and was denied, but now the shifting of the regulations have changed and they would now be eligible, are they able to resubmit now that they're eligible?
They are able to resubmit. My recommendation, Mayor Bedeau, if you know of a business like that, is have them call me. I can save them the time to not reapply, but we have the ability to pull their application and move it back in. So I would just have them contact me directly, and we'll take care of moving them back in. And I can talk them through if there's a change that was made significant enough that would bring their business in.
Well, hopefully your phone is ringing off the hook.
It is.
That happens when you have $4 million in your pocket.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Tyler, thanks for coming in.
Yep.
Okay, after item 7 is item number 8, the council committee reports. We will start with the Personnel and Finance Committee. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, thank you, Council President Johnson. We have 3 items on the agenda. Item number 1 is the approval of bills, and I so.
And I so second it. Stunek.
We have a motion by Pritchett, a second by Stunek to pay the bills. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, item number 2 is the Community Service Officer resignation and request to hire. Motion coming out of committee is to accept Community Service Officer Hannah Tolbert's resignation with regret and authorize filling the vacancy, and I so move.
And second, T. Erickson.
We have a motion by Pritchett and a second by T. Erickson. Is there any discussion? Alderman Pritchett?
Just a little bit. She did give a 2-week notice. And then just so you know, basically the police department will come back with the name for ratification after they've gone through the process.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Even Corky even turned his camera on. Any questions of Corky while he's here? No?
It's one of Corky.
We'll vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, item number 3 is the updated drug and alcohol policy for commercial drivers, the DOT policy. And coming out of committee, the motion is to approve the updated drug and alcohol policy for commercial drivers as presented, and I so move.
And I so second it. Stunek.
We have a motion by Pritchett, a second by Stunek. Alderman Pritchett.
So just real quickly, this is from a federal law in 2020. What it is we've done these things before, but now in order to query about new employees' licenses and to check once a year, we need to go through the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's Commercial Driving License Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. Whew, that's a mouthful. So they basically have one data clearinghouse where we can check for priors and that sort of thing.
Excellent. That's they need to find an acronym for that organization. So is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Pritchett.
End of report.
Thank you. That brings us to the Safety and Public Works Committee. Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a notification, we'll be following the Safety and Public Works Committee agenda, which has everything in the reverse order of the main agenda. So we'll start with item number 1, which is the DNR Forestry Tree Grant approval. If I may, Mr. Chair, ask Mr. Sandy to give us a little background on this.
Excellent. Mr. Sandy.
Or Tony, you can hop into.
Oh, Tony's, that's right. I remember Tony.
Have at it, Tony. Tell us about the program.
Well, it's a pretty neat program. Initially, the USDA Forest Service offered the grant to the Minnesota DNR. $30,395. Apparently, a city in the Minneapolis dropped out, and therefore it got bumped up to $36,000. They're offering us no matching grant whatsoever, and it'll be boils down to it. We're going to get a public tree survey, which will go out for RFPs to see who can do that for us. I do have a list provided by the Minnesota DNR that I can pick from or send RFPs out to. A big thing of it is that they want to stop the spread of emerald ash borer, which is not to Brainerd yet, but it has been moving north, and they want to make sure that we don't have a situation hitting the Brainerd area. If they would find any diseased trees, they would try to treat it. If it can't be treated, then they would cut it down. And they're also looking at, with the tree inventory, replacing trees and adding to the tree population in the city and using specific tree species. So we'd be getting a great benefit out of this, in my opinion. And the park board, they reviewed the contract and the Exhibit A, which basically is in English rather than tougher words to understand. So I think it would be a good thing for Brainerd. It goes over a 2-year period, and any cost to us, we would submit to the DNR, and then they would refund the cost to the city. And I've cleared this through the finance director. I talked to Connie about this, and she sees no problem in there'd be a slight delay in the getting paid back, but probably within 2 or 3 months, we'd receive the funds back.
Thank you, Tony. The motion on the committee, Mr. Chair, is to accept staff's recommendation, approve the grant with Ms. Kaufman.
I so second, sorry. So
Is that
second.
you? Ms. Kaufman designated as the lead person to fulfill the grant requirements. These Zoom meetings are great games.
Lambert, I second it.
A motion by Bevins, second by Lambert. Is there any discussion? I want to say thank you to Tony for getting this grant submitted and getting the grant money in, because now that we're kind of prioritizing trees as a city, this blends right in what we're doing over the next few years. So this is really great news for the city. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go by roll call.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Bevins.
Thank you. Item number 2 is the streetlight request at 2014 Crestview Lane. The motion is to approve the petitioner's request to turn the light back on near Norway Court on Crestview Lane, and I so move.
Erickson, second.
Motion by Bevins, second by Wayne Erickson. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Alderman
just if you can, we did ask the petitioner to go back to his neighbors and get their thoughts on it. They all signed the petition that this is acceptable for them.
Good deal. So the whole neighborhood wanted the light, and the motion is to turn the light on. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Well, I mean, yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson. Lambert.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Bevins.
End of report.
Thank you. It wasn't that hard to follow along despite the reversed order, I gotta say. That brings us to unfinished business, item number 9A, CARES funding discussion. I don't know, Connie, Jennifer, whoever is taking this, go ahead.
I'll start it off. The first thing I just want to talk about, when we last met on August 17th, and council adopted basically what we had as bucket number 1, bucket number 2, and bucket number 3. Of bucket number 1, the only thing that actually wasn't spent was the amount for the marketing campaign. We had $25,000 for the marketing campaign, and we actually only spent $11,000. So what staff is recommending, since we did the marketing campaign, our intern left, we have partnered with Visit Brainerd. And so the recommendation from staff is to take that remaining $14,000 and to put it in with the Visit Brainerd bucket, so that they have a total budget of roughly, so they have a total of $39,000 to spend, of which $37,000 is remaining to be spent. So that's the first recommendation from staff. The second recommendation from staff is that we are planning on spending $240,466,000 between the end of the last council meeting and November 15th. If you recall in the memo, there are 3 distinct elements that must be present if the CARES funds can be used, and that is the expenditure is necessary and due to COVID. It's unaccounted for, it wasn't budgeted for in the 2020 budget, and the expenses to be incurred between March 1st and November 15th. And what we have found out is that that money has to be spent, has to be out the door by November 15th. There are 2 exceptions. One is payroll that is incurred prior to November 15th, can be paid out on the next payroll. And the other one is a delay in the supply chain. This would be documented by when we placed the order that we had an anticipated delivery date prior to November 15th when the order was placed. So we have $240,000 that we're anticipating to be spent, and we also have $36,571 that is unspent, is unbudgeted yet. Staff's recommendation to spend those funds is to reconsider the administrative leave that we first initially proposed on August 17th. This was the day every payroll cycle that the patrol officers were taking off to make sure that we were social distancing, that they had time to keep healthy. The park maintenance and street maintenance, they were sent home for 2 weeks on administrative leave when they could not work remotely. And as well as the police record management staff, we didn't have the ability for them to work remotely when we first started working from home, as well as BPU. They also had some administrative staff that had to work. So what staff's recommendation is that council authorizes using $189,773 of CARES Act for administrative leave. And that would cover the amount that's unbudgeted, as well as if something would happen where the concern we have is that we can get the supplies, but the contractors might not be able to get it installed by the November 15th deadline. And what would happen then is we'd reimburse ourselves. These funds would go into our capital fund, and then we would have those funds available to pay for the contractors, possibly if we need to in 2021. So is there any questions?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Lambert, I have a question. Connie, did I miss when you went back one? Was it the street maintenance? Was that also included in your total? And I missed that report.
Yes, it is included, the street maintenance, when they were sent home for those 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay.
That good, Jan? Any other questions of Connie on these updated numbers?
No, Mr. President, if I may.
You may.
So just as if you can't tell, the CARES Act funds are really, really complicated. And we're trying to do our due diligence to make sure we are spending them the way that they are intended to be spent. Guidance has continued to change on these funds over the last couple of months. And so we're trying to stay on top of it. One of it is to make sure that the council is fully aware of what staff is proposing as far as the CARES Act funds are concerned. So I just want to say a big thank you to Connie, because I know this has been a moving target to try to figure out where and how we can spend the CARES Act funds that, number one, have the most impact. And as you recall, of the $1 million, 400,000 of it, we to small businesses and 100,000 to nonprofits. So really just trying to be mindful of how we're spending the other 600,000.
And I just wanted to add one more thing. Included in the packet was the guidance that staff was using to justify for the administrative leave. What has changed since we last met in August, and why we're thinking in the documentation that we're using.
Thank you. Any questions, Alderman Pritchett? No.
I have a motion if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve staff recommendations of transferring the $14,000 to the Visit Brainerd bucket and the was it $189,773 to the administrative leave.
Second.
A motion by Pritchett, a second by Stunek. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Aye.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to item 9B, unfinished business. And I think we got a call for applicants probably. We do, Mayor Bedeau.
All right. Welcome back. We are back on Zoom. For some reason, it will not let me sit in front of my wonderful throne, so we'll just get rid of that. It would have been fun. It's not fun now. WebEx is ruining my fun for the last time. So hopefully we're back in person. I'm irritated now. All right, call for applicants. The mayor recommends. These are the applications that I'm looking for. You can find them on our website. That is www.ci.brainerd.mn.us. We're looking for the following: Cable TV Advisory Committee, 1 term expiring 2021, 2 terms expiring 2020. The Charter Commission, 2 terms expiring 2020, and the Housing Redevelopment Authority, which is the HRA, 1 term expiring 2020. For the Water Tower Committee and the King Commission.
Mr. Chair,
Jan,
did we ever find out, do we need to have a cable advisory committee any longer? Has anybody found that out, if that's necessary?
if it's a legal requirement,
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, we're having difficulty filling it. We no longer go through the media, whatever.
we still have a franchise fee though. So I don't think we're legally required, but I think it's good to have, and I have full confidence Mayor Bedeau will have that filled by the end of the year.
Go for it, Dave. Thanks.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. It brings us to item 10, new business. 10A, new on-sale beer, wine, and Sunday licenses submitted by Jason Goldie, owner of Big J's Pizza Arcade. Jennifer? Oh, David Chansky, probably, yeah, permit.
Or Connie.
Oh,
Yeah.
Connie does liquor license, yeah.
That's all right. So whenever we have a brand new liquor license, we've been putting on the agenda for council to be aware of. This will be opening downtown, and the on-sale beer, wine, and Sunday license is subject to or contingent upon background investigation and fire inspection. So this will be an arcade, and it'll be kind of cool to have it downtown. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, exciting. And it's just a beer and wine and Sunday license. It's not a full-blown liquor license.
Correct.
Okay.
So it doesn't come towards one of our 12 that we're limited to by state statute.
And it's Big J's Pizza Arcade. I'm excited about it already. I hear they're planning on opening November 1st, correct? So right around the corner, we're going to have an arcade downtown. Looking for a motion to approve it.
Lambert, so move.
Second, Bevins.
A motion by Lambert, a second by Bevins. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson, T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Brings us to the next item. David Chansky.
Mr. President, I just want to take the quick opportunity here. I just did the wine and beer license for Big J's, and actually let the council know that the Big J's actually coming to downtown Brainerd is actually a success of the door. Mr. Goldie actually originally was looking at a location in Baxter until they gave him a preliminary cost on his sack and whack fees, said no thank you, and heard about Brainerd and started looking downtown, heard of rail corridor and said this is where I want to be. So another little success for the River to Rail initiative.
Excellent. Thank you, David. And good news all around. Next step, eliminate Sack and Whack citywide, but we'll get there later. The next item is B, call for a public hearing for discussion on the implementation and progress of the Small Cities Development Program Grant, CDAP 170019 FY18 for primarily the Northeast Brainerd area.
So this is a small city development grant that we got through deed. And part of the process is to hold a public hearing while the grant is in the process. And so this is for the Northeast area, and then the commercial building at 707 Laurel Street. So that's why it's primarily Northeast, but there was one business that was carved into the grant. So this is just a common practice to call for the public hearing at the November 2nd meeting.
Okay, looking for a motion to call for the public hearing.
Lambert, so move.
Second, Bevins.
A motion by Lambert, second by Bevins. Any discussion on having the public hearing at our next meeting? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the first reading of proposed ordinance 1512, ordinance amending section 600 of the Brainerd City Code pertaining to public health and garbage disposal. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. So we had a solid waste committee meeting where we reviewed the entire ordinance in its entirety. It was a very, very good meeting. I appreciate Alderwoman Lambert sitting on that committee and providing input. We met with Waste Partners, Waste Management, Nisswa Sanitation, and Pequot Lake Sanitation. Really was a discussion on what is currently working, what doesn't work, what have the haulers seen in other cities that works well. As you all know, this really stemmed from a complaint of people leaving their garbage containers out for too long or not pulling them back in at all. And so the ordinance revision hits on a few areas that you can see in your packet. So the first thing that we changed was the ordinance currently reads that street and alley pickup are allowed. From the hauler's perspective, they belong in the alley, and city staff would agree with that. The garbage containers should be in the alleys. They're not visible if there's an alley available. So we modified the ordinance to state that pickup would be from the alley unless it is not available. It also requires the hauler to provide the city schedules for pickup within the city, holiday schedules, and a list of addresses that we can mutually agree upon that is not available for pickup from the alley. What this does is really all the haulers stated that they have 1 or 2 days that they pick up all the cans in Brainerd, and they're just generally split by Washington Street. And so what we figured is that if we know that Waste Partners picks up north of Washington Street on Mondays and there's a Waste Partners can out on a Thursday, and we get a complaint about it, that that person would become part of our administrative citation process. Second thing that we changed is that cans for refuse or recycling shall be placed out no earlier than 6 p.m. the day before collection and removed by the end of the day of collection, which means that the can can basically be left out for 30 hours total. This, along with the hauler's pickup schedules, will provide us with an enforceable tool. We also decided that the haulers in the city, we should meet annually to discuss solid waste issues in the city. This was a very valuable exercise from the whole committee's perspective. It was good to hear their perspective on things and for them to hear where the city stands on garbage collection. We decided that as soon as the ordinance amendment is amended, we would be working together to go on a campaign to educate residents the importance of pulling in your cans timely, and how it helps both from a maintenance perspective. It helps from the hauler's perspective of keeping tabs on their customers. The Ordinance Amendment, the fifth thing that it does is that it only allows 4 haulers licenses in Brainerd per year. We run into an issue because of our proximity to the Crow Wing County landfill. There's a number of haulers that may use Brainerd as a topping off trucks kind of thing where they're grabbing a few cans on the way through town. And the licenses, you know, being limited to the current 4, and it's been like that for a while, I believe. We haven't had a hauler around town more than 4 for a while. That if we limited it to 4, that would limit that practice of someone topping off trucks. I believe the smallest hauler was Pequot Lake Sanitation, and he stated he had 60 to 70 customers in Brainerd. So basically, the licenses would be offered to the first 4 from the year prior. If they do not obtain their license, that would then become available to another eligible hauler. And then we just did some other general wordsmithing to make it more readable and easier to understand. One of the other things that we discussed was increasing the license fee. I believe right now it's $50 per truck, which is pretty minimal from a garbage collector standpoint. We discussed using that as a tool to basically limit the amount of haulers we have in town or limiting the licenses. They were pretty much opposed to increasing the license fee, although Eric Logie from Waste Partners was for that. They felt that this would be a good starting point and we could see if it worked or not here when we meet again. So that's basically the changes in a nutshell. Staff's recommendation would be to hold or dispense with the first reading of this ordinance as proposed.
Thank you, Paul. I have one question. Here that we're entering deer season, and I guess this is our committee to handle our waste issues. Did you guys discuss rancid carcasses at all?
Never got brought up.
I might want to look into it. It's in the city charter. We got to make some rancid carcass legislation here. Dan, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to say, and I probably missed it. We've asked the haulers to also give us the holiday schedule, so that would help with the enforcement also.
Excellent, and thanks for serving on that committee and turning it right around for the council to take action on. I'm ready for a motion to dispense with the actual first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Pritchett, second by Lambert. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert. And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to the next item, which is 10D. Consider an interim public works department. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. So, as you know, the Park Board has been evaluating several options upon the retirement of Parks and Rec Director Tony Saylor. On August 5th, the Park Board passed a motion unanimously to ask the City Council if they would work collectively with the Park Board to consider exploring an interim Public Works Department. The Council discussed this at their September 8th meeting, and the recommendation was made to create a discussion group comprised of 2 City Council members, Gabe Johnson and Wayne Erickson were the council members, 2 Park Board members, Kara Schaefer and Kevin Yeager were the Park Board members, both chair and vice chair, and then several staff. That group met on September 18th and discussed the pros and the cons, considerations for creating an interim Public Works Department. The Park Board was also in the process of soliciting proposals to outsource their rec programs. So the recommendation from that discussion group was to create an interim Public Works Department. And then further, the Park Board passed a motion at their October 6th meeting asking that we move forward that the Parks Department move forward as a participant in the formation of an interim Public Works Department without replacing the Park Director position, and request that staff organize and prepare follow-up meetings, documentation, language, and personnel to formally present this to Council. The discussion group also considered the rec coordinator but there were really too many unknowns at the time the discussion group convened. So what we're doing is gonna and reconvene the group once the park board has made a decision regarding their rec programs. However, we would like to move forward with the interim public works department. The public discussion group has a meeting scheduled for October 30th to discuss next steps. So the recommendation from the discussion group and then ultimately from the park board is to move forward with it. We would move park maintenance staff under the city engineer on an interim basis. And in your packet, there is a revised org chart. The group originally discussed a 3-month trial period. However, staff would recommend that we look at this at least 6 months, but we would recommend a full year. That would give us a good amount of time to be able to evaluate this and really to get through the seasons and see how this works. In 2021, the plan is to put an addition on the streets garage to accommodate parks maintenance staff, city Sandy Parks Director Saylor, street foreman Maddow, and park foreman Harris have been working with Seth to prepare a plan and bid that project out in January or February, and then hopefully start construction to the addition in the spring of 2021. That addition is in the 2021 capital plan. So with that, staff's recommendation is to authorize the creation of an interim public works department from December 19th, 2020 to December 18th of 2021, and then to reevaluate it. I'm sure we would be happy to answer any of your questions. Sandy is here, as well as Chris Schubert, Connie Hillman, David Chansky, and then of course, and Wayne, who participated in the discussion group. So with that, Mr.
Thank you, Jan.
Would we still outsource any of our recreation? Would there be any outsourcing that you talked about earlier?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
Tony can also answer this. The Parks Department or the Park Board did release an RFP to outsource the rec programs. I know that Tony is currently working with a couple of organizations and may be presenting something to an upcoming Park Board meeting. Tony, do you have additional things you want to share?
Mr. President and Council, I have been, along with talking a little bit to the YMCA and community education. I've drawn up a proposal that I'm going to present to the Park Board at next Tuesday's meeting. I believe it's October 27th, and to kind of get a feel for what they think. There has been some interest in it. And I haven't really divulged it to the Park Board members yet, so I'd hate to kind of prelude that with anything, but we will be discussing it further on the 27th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think just to the outsourcing, that would really just be entirely up to the Park Board, not really a city council thing. And this discussion on the Public Works Director is really, or a Public Works Department is really its own discussion separate from what the programming the parks offers and how they offer it. Any other discussion or questions? Wayne, I'll go to you for a motion since you're on the committee. You're muted.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Second. We have a motion by Wayne Erickson, second by Tad Erickson to adopt staff's recommendation of creating an interim public works department for a year and addressing it next year to see how it works for the city and the parks. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Aye.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to another item on the agenda, if I can pull that up here. That brings us to the public forum. There are no members of the public here, unless Eric wants to say something. Can you say something, Eric? Seeing nobody from the public here, we'll just go on to number 12, staff reports. Anything updated since the meeting? Go ahead and raise your hand if you have something. Jennifer, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. Just a few quick updates. Just a few updates regarding downtown Brainerd. Number one, I know I mentioned at the last meeting that we had some banners that were put up. Thanks to BPU for helping the Business Coalition get those up. They also have some Christmas banners, and BPU is also going to be helping put up those Christmas banners as well. Babe the Blue Ox, as you know, you could accept that as a gift, and the Crossing Arts Alliance and the Downtown Business Coalition wasted no time for artists to decorate or paint Babe the Blue Ox. The question mark ox is what I have seen. So stay tuned. I am assuming that we will be asking for a council member to be on that jury. And last, in regards to downtown, the Downtown Brainerd Business Coalition would like to revive the farmers market in 2021. So they've started taking a look at that. We've only had one meeting so far, but stay tuned. The other thing, as Connie mentioned, the marketing with Visit Brainerd using our CARES Act funds. As you know, Visit Brainerd is the Visitor Convention Bureau on behalf of the cities of Brainerd and Baxter. And so we thought it was just a really nice fit to work with Visit Brainerd. That is what they do, marketing communications. So with that, I also kind of mentioned the Streets Garage. Paul, I don't know if you want to give any more detail when it comes to your staff report, but know that we're also working on that as well. And that's my report.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other staff reports? Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. You guys probably all were in the middle of construction again here the past couple of weeks, with a couple of our bridges being worked on at once. As the council knows, you guys authorized the replacement of those glands or expansion joints, and we got that done here today. And I was able actually to participate in our bridge inspection with our consulted Bolton and Mink did our bridge inspections here this year, and we pulled out the drone to do a lot of our inspection, which is a pretty cool tool used to get a look at those interior beams, looking at cracking and things. So a little bit different, little high technology that we use. We typically use a snooper truck to get down there, but and nothing is really a replacement for getting your hands on it and seeing it up close, but a drone helps to fill in that gap of those biennial inspections that we have to do and get eyes on those interior columns. So most of the work and things should be done on both bridges, and we should be good for another couple of years. So that's all I had.
Thanks, Paul. Any other staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the mayor's report.
Well. Following up with Paul's bridge talk, Paul, I can't believe you didn't talk about the Highway 25 bridge. We had a meeting this week, last week, at the potential design of the Highway 25 bridge, and the cost of it is the most important thing. It's not going to cost us $1 million to have a really nice bridge with some actually cool elements, to have that access into our northeast side of town look really nice. So I want to thank Paul and MnDOT for that meeting. Jan Lambert as well, so that was a really nice meeting to sit. And then follow up with just thanking you guys on the public works decision and moving that forward, as that is something that the board has been working hard on, and trying to figure out a way to make everything work is really important. I appreciate the way that you're moving forward. So thank you guys for that. Other than that, I have nothing.
Thank you, Mayor. That brings us to item 14, council member reports. And we'll just go in order. I see Alderman Pritchett's number one.
All right. The only thing I'd like to say is remind our citizens of our snow emergency procedures. When we look at the weather upcoming, we could have a few inches of snow tomorrow. Drive carefully as you all relearn how to drive on that stuff. There's always a few more fender benders, and get out and vote. It didn't take too long. They got the drop box right by the county, and if you want to go vote in person, you can do that early also. And just remember, be kind, be considerate, and be patient.
Good words. Alderman Lambert. You're muted.
Sorry. Again, I'll reiterate what Dave said, and we had a very good meeting on the 25 bridge. It was very enjoyable. The other thing that I like to do, it's going to be a rhetorical question, guys, so I apologize for that. We've been talking, and it's election time, I all that, but we're always concerned about taxes. And as you know, commercial is going down and residents are going up. So I guess my rhetorical question is this. We need to have business, industrial manufacturing coming in. So say we got that in, then we need employees. Well, once we get employees, we need housing. So what I'd like to suggest is that on a retreat for the next council would be perhaps we can discuss it, 20 minutes or so of a discussion of how we can work through that. Or just come up with some plans. It's not anything we're going to do in a year. But I think it'd be good to start the preliminary planning or thought process. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. And I think you're spot on. And I think there are some tools in the works, like the county created a housing trust fund just this year, and the county HRA and Brainerd HRA are working on that. And I think the city should have some discussion on how we're going to move forward with our housing policy for the next generation. Alderman Bevins. Muted.
They don't even have it done. I just want to, on behalf of the Northside residents, welcome Mayor Bedeau to the north side. As you can see behind me out the window, where it's always 70 and sunny. And a couple of the residents have already logged a few concerns, and so committee will be stopping by with a few subtle recommendations, maybe a few fines, and some expectations which you are currently not meeting. Thank you. Thanks for moving in.
I welcome all requests and or nudges.
A kicker would go over big.
Thank you, Alderman Bevins. Alderman Stunek.
I have nothing tonight.
Thank you, Alderman Stunek. We got a Tiger King appearance over here.
Ha ha.
Alderman Tad.
Thank you. I know, Jan, you said this was a rhetorical question, but how about an answer to? I will just say that I think that'd be a good idea to have that housing workshop or discussion. And that's something I've been thinking about too. I think our rural areas, such as Brainerd, is poised to grow. I think we're all seeing that and hearing that. I'm sure you've heard that from new residents as well. And you talk to our realtors, and the market is hot. So I think looking at how we can accommodate new residents and take on additional growth over the next, from immediacy. So now the next couple of years would be a good idea. So I know you don't want an answer, but there's at least one. So other than that, nothing from me.
Thank you, Tad. Alderman Wayne Erickson.
Just want to have an opportunity to be downtown and visit our store down there selling the keepsake, the Brainerd, and I was picked up my water tower. No, it's not a water tower anymore. What do we call it now? Just the tower?
The Beacon of the North.
Tower of the North keychain. And but I did want to say I'm so impressed with the staff, the city staff, and all the extra work that they've had to do
with all these, trying to make all this work for the funds that have come in. I just think Connie and the staff there have just done a great job. I'm really impressed. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Wayne. And I watched the city council candidates forum, and they had all the contested races in the city of Brainerd this year. All the candidates were able to speak. It was a great forum, except for the part where the mayor budged in and gave statements, even though he's running unopposed. But I will say, every single person, I'll second David Pritchett's motion, get out and vote and pay attention to your local elections. And I was pleased to see that every single person running this year said it was a priority to keep taxes low on the citizens. And I am going to hold all past and future candidates accountable for their campaign promises of keeping taxes low. So thank you. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second, Lambert.
Motion by Stunek, a second by Lambert. By roll call.
Stunek,
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Aye.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, and we're adjourned. Everybody take care, and we'll see you in person at the next meeting.
In person. Amen. Bye.